Imagine waking up next to the person you love most in the world. You have shared 10 years of mortgage and a family with them. You think you know every secret they have ever held. Now imagine a phone call in the middle of the night. A voice on the other end claims the man sleeping next to you isn't who he says he is. Welcome back to True Crime Frontier, where we map the darkest territories of the human psyche. Before we dive into today's mysterious case of a life built on shadows, do me a favor like this video, share it with someone who loves a deep mystery, and subscribe to join our growing community of digital detectives. It helps us keep the lights on here at the Frontier. Today we are looking at the case of a man named Julian Vane. He was a pillar of his community, a devoted father, and a highly respected professional. But as his wife Claire was about to find out the real Julian Vane had disappeared decades ago, the man in her house was a ghost inhabiting another person's life. The story begins in a quiet, affluent suburb where life moved at a leisurely pace. In this neighborhood, Julian and Claire were the golden couple. Julian was known for his steady hands and calm demeanor. He was the kind of man who coached the local youth soccer team and volunteered at every charity gala. He was the neighbor everyone trusted with their house keys. But in 2026, the cracks began to show. It started with a routine background check for a high-level career promotion. A discrepancy was flagged. Julian's records were linked to a person who had been declared missing in a small town in Ohio 30 years ago. The investigator at the firm found it odd that a man of Julian's stature would have a social security number that had been dormant for nearly 2 decades before suddenly springing to life in a different state. When Claire first heard the whispers of a paperwork error, she laughed it off. She had seen Julian's degrees on the wall. She had attended his professional awards ceremonies. She had no reason to doubt the man she had built a life with. However, when she confronted him over dinner one Tuesday night, Julian didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. He simply smiled and offered a simple explanation. Julian laughed it off as a clerical error, a glitch in the system that he promised to clear up with a few phone calls the following morning. He was so convincing, so charmingly dismissive that Claire actually felt guilty for even bringing it up. She felt like a disloyal wife for even entertaining the idea that her husband was anything other than what he seemed. But Claire was a journalist, and her instinct for the truth was stronger than her fear or her guilt. She began to notice small things she had previously overlooked. Julian never talked about his parents claiming they passed away in a tragic fire that destroyed all his family photos. He had no childhood friends, citing a nomadic upbringing. These stories had always seemed tragic and romantic, but now they felt like a calculated wall. While Julian was away for what he called a medical conference in a neighboring city, Claire did the one thing she promised she would never do. She looked into his private files in the attic. Inside a locked humidor, she didn't find family heirlooms or expensive cigars. She found a collection of identifications hidden in a false bottom. As she laid the licenses out on the floor, the realization hit her like a physical blow. The same face but different names and different lives. There was Thomas Reed, a software engineer who had gone missing in 2012. There was Stephen Glass, a researcher whose trail went cold in 2018. And then there was the identity he was currently using, Julian Vane. The man she was married to was not a doctor or a researcher or an engineer. He was a life thief. He was a master of the long con, a man who would find individuals with no close ties, no living relatives, and no social footprint, and he would literally become them. He would study their histories, take over their credentials, and drain their bank accounts before moving on to a new identity. This wasn't just a secret past, it was a career of erasure. Each card represented a human being whose existence had been swallowed by the man she thought she knew. She realized that every memory they had shared was built on the foundation of someone else's. Each card represented a life story that had been overtaken by the man she thought she knew. She sat in the quiet attic surrounded by the traces of the various personas her husband had adopted over the years. The inquiry reached a pivotal moment when local officials, following up on a tip regarding the timeline of the original Julian Vane, began to piece together a complex puzzle. They discovered that the true Julian had gone off the radar shortly after his graduation, precisely when the person in Claire's home arrived in the city with a new set of credentials. It became apparent that this was a recurring pattern of replacement. By the time authorities arrived at the family residence to conduct a formal review of the property, the man Claire knew as her husband had already departed. He had sensed the change in the atmosphere. He had noticed the way Claire's expression had shifted, no longer filled with trust, but with a quiet, observant realization. He didn't take any belongings, he simply stepped out of the house and faded into a new chapter under a different name. The home, once a place of comfort, was now a site of intense official scrutiny. Teams in professional gear moved through the hallways, carefully examining every detail to uncover who the man truly was. During the search of the property, investigators moved to the basement. It was a space Julian had always kept strictly for his hobbies, a room Claire rarely entered out of respect for his privacy. Underneath the pristine state-of-the-art home gym, forensic teams discovered something that changed the case from fraud to a deep unsolved mystery. They found a hidden compartment containing personal items belonging to the real Julian Vane, along with the belongings of at least 4 other men whose identities had been systematically erased over the last 20 years. There were watches, wedding rings, and even a set of journals that Julian had used to practice the signatures of his victims. It was a library of stolen souls. Each item was a trophy, a memento of a life he had successfully hijacked. The journals were particularly chilling. They contained meticulous notes on the victims' speech patterns, their favorite foods, and their childhood memories. He hadn't just stolen their names, he had studied them like an actor preparing for a role. But this wasn't a play, it was a permanent replacement. The level of detail was breathtaking and horrifying to the investigators. Subscribe to True Crime Frontier, make sure you like and share this video, and also don't forget to tell us your country in the comment below. The professional who had been working in the community for years had never actually earned the credentials he used. He was a master of mimicry with a terrifying ability to simulate expertise. He had spent years reading medical textbooks and attending seminars just to play the part of a specialist. Every person who trusted him with their health or their finances was part of a high-stakes game played by a man with no true identity. He was a chameleon of the suburbs, hiding in plain sight by being exactly who everyone expected him to be. The hospital where he worked was forced to review every case he had touched, realizing that a man without a degree had been making life-altering decisions for years. The scandal rocked the community. People who had invited him into their homes and trusted him with their children's lives were left questioning their own judgment. How could someone be so perfect and yet be a total fabrication? The psychological impact on the town was immense as the realization set in that their pillar of the community was nothing more than a carefully constructed shadow. He had used their trust as his primary tool. As the weeks turned into months, the scope of the deception grew. Private investigators hired by the victims' families found that the man had been operating across several states for the better part of 3 decades. He would marry, build a reputation, and then just as the authorities or the truth began to close in, he would stage a disappearance or simply walk away, leaving his family to pick up the pieces of a life that never existed. He was always one step ahead, always aware of when the mask was beginning to crack. To this day, the man Claire knew as her husband has never been found. He vanished into the Pacific Northwest, likely already wearing a new name and a new face in a different city, perhaps even starting a new family with a new set of lies. He left no digital footprint, no paper trail, and no clues to his true origin. He was a man who had perfected the art of being nobody while appearing to be everybody. The authorities believe he is still out there continuing the cycle with a new unsuspecting victim who believes found the perfect partner. Claire and her children now live in a world where they must always look over their shoulders. They had to change their names and move to an undisclosed location, living in a constant state of hypervigilance. Claire often wonders if the man she loved ever truly existed, or if every "I love you" was just another line in a script he had perfected over 30 years of practice. The psychological wreckage is profound. How do you explain to your children that their father was a character in a long-running play? This case serves as a chilling reminder to us all: we only see what people want us to see. We fall in love with the mask, never realizing there might be a hollow space where a soul should be. The person sitting across the table from you right now might be exactly who they say they are, or they might be a stranger who has been studying you, waiting for the right moment to step into your life and steal your future. It is a mystery that remains unsolved, a ghost story that is still being written in the shadows of some other quiet sub. What is the biggest red flag you have ever noticed in a story that didn't quite add up? Have you ever met someone who seemed too perfect, whose past was a little too blurry? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Your observation might just help someone else stay safe or recognize a pattern before it's too late. Thanks for watching this deep dive on True Crime Frontier. If you found this mystery intriguing and want to help us uncover more cases of hidden identities and digital shadows, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The frontier is vast, and we have only just begun to explore its darkest corners. We are dedicated to finding the truth, no matter how deep it is buried or how many masks it wears. I will see you in the next investigation. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and most importantly, stay safe. Remember, the most dangerous strangers are often the ones we let into our homes. Join us next time as we venture back to the edge of the unknown. I'm True Crime Frontier signing